So today we're talking about celebration and recognition. What do most leaders not understand about this topic?
That's a good question. Just how powerful it actually is. And I think most of us at least, will mentally or verbally agree with the idea that, recognition and celebration is good, but we don't understand that it's powerful. And what I mean by powerful is like, if we understand human motivation and we understand the role of the leader as helping people go from here to there, then what we are often talking about is a conversation about behavior change in service of other people. And if we get down to base level theory of behavior change within human beings, we're talking carrot and stick. So often, though, when we think about the role of leaders, we're thinking about the hard stick of accountability, correction, changing what shouldn't be or what's not right into what's right. But so often, if we focus so much on that, we miss out on this entire swath of opportunity and potential that looks like just amplifying the things that are going really, really well, recognizing the things that are going really, really well. And then beyond that, creating a culture where the bottleneck for recognition in the organization isn't just you, but rather you're creating a culture. People like us do things like this where constantly there's just this evergreen flywheel of people recognizing the behaviors we want to see repeated. And man, that's when momentum really starts to get generated, is when we're not just dwelling on what are the things that are wrong that we want to be right, but rather what are the things that are right that we want to recognize, celebrate, and amplify.
Is there a time or a story of when this was really driven home for you, or there was like an aha moment where you just looked around the environment you were in and saw this being played out really well?
I think it applies. It's a book, is what I would say. It's not a time or story, but it's a book. And the book is called Oh Great One. And it's a little parable, in which we can look at it and we can be like, oh, that's a really simple book. But I mean, it was written by a guy named David Novak, who was the CEO of Yum Brands, which when he came into Yum Brands, that's KFC, Taco Bell, there's a whole host of brands that fall under the Yum Brands umbrella. When he came in at that time, things were bad and getting worse, and he actually orchestrated a turnaround in the organization, right? Things not only stopped becoming bad, they actually became really, really good. And many CEOs, he now runs a leadership podcast, actually. Many CEOs look to him as like a brilliant leader, really, really sharp. And I believe it was his first book that he wrote on leadership. The entire topic he wanted to focus on was the power of recognition, because that is what he said. The single thing that he focused on to turn around that massive corporate conglomerate was instilling a culture of recognition at every level of the organization. And so for me, I was thinking, because I got to interview this guy, I was thinking, man, I'm about to interview one of the top 100 probably most influential CEOs in America, a guy that has not just talked about the work of leading thousands of people, but has done it. And I was expecting it to be incredibly sophisticated. And what I got was actually something really simple. He just did it better than everyone else. And that's, I think, when I started to really start to believe, okay, this isn't just something that's good, it's powerful. And when I started to believe that it was powerful, I started to see it everywhere in the leaders that I really admire.
Okay. Can you paint a picture of what it might look like when this is missing entirely from an organization? And then also like what is possible when this is running really well?
Yeah. I think maybe a good lagging indicator of does recognition and affirmation exist in your organization? Like, are people having fun? Is actually a pretty good way to look at it. And maybe a first way to look at it is, are you having fun? And it's crazy. I can look at our organization. There have been seasons and times where I'm not having fun and the people that I'm working with aren't having fun either by extension. And you can just tell, like, there's not celebration, there's not recognition. We're taking both what we do maybe a little too seriously, but we're also taking ourselves way too seriously. Conversely, whenever celebration and recognition are abundant, wholehearted, and authentic, and I would highlight those three words: abundant, wholehearted, and authentic. Authentic being a big one. It's crazy how fun things become. You know, we were just at our in-person experience in Austin, Texas, and it was one of the best things our team has ever done. It was 60 leaders, and the reason why I think I can say that in an objective way, non-boastfully, is some of our customers have told me that's the best thing you've ever done. So it's like, okay, awesome. And what was neat is we would finish these long, like 15, 16, 17-hour days, and our team would have a little bit of a powwow at the end of the day, right? 10 p.m., something like that. And a lot of times we'd just sit around talking about how good things were going and how, like, these amazing things that were going on. And it's like, I didn't want to go to bed. I was like, I just want us to keep hanging, and clearly neither did y'all. And sometimes I'd be like, we need to go to bed, folks, right? But I think, again, you enjoy being around each other. You enjoy affirming each other. It's not this thing that you're trying to manufacture. You're just, there's a heart of celebration and abundance in the organization when this is going on well. Yeah, I guess, is there anything you want to say to that? And then we can talk about what it looks like when it's not around.
Yeah, so you highlighted those three key things. You said it was
abundance, wholehearted
and authentic. Can you, because in my mind, some of those things, there's a lot of overlap in maybe the direction that those could go. Can you kind of distinguish what those three things are in this context?
Yeah, I appreciate you for saying in this context. Abundant, it's not being withheld, right? One of the Proverbs I'm sure we'll talk on more in this conversation today is, I think it's Proverbs 3:27. Do not withhold good from those to whom it is due when it is in your power to act. That's a good proverb. And I know leaders and have actually been counseled to act this way, that says, be very reserved with your compliments to your people, because you want them to be hungry for your compliments.
Right. Issues with that.
Yeah, me too. Right. Now, the element of truth that's in that I think is good is we should not be engaging in flattery, which there are personality types that engage in flattery, which is like, I'm just saying stuff to say stuff to make people smile. It's not actually true.
Yeah.
That's not good leadership at all. But, you know, what we're really talking about there is flirting with the line between motivation and manipulation. And, you know, I believe we're supposed to operate in abundance, which is when I see something good, I say something good. And I am not at all going to say like, well, I gave them a compliment yesterday, so I need to wait a couple of weeks before I give them another one. If it's true, you should say it, is what I would say, but more important, what Proverbs would say. So that's abundant. Wholehearted, you know, it should come out of the overflow of your heart, right? Guard your heart above all else, for out of it flows the wellspring of life. Out of the core of your being, labehu is the Hebrew word, flows everything you do. And so what we want to do is have a heart, a core, a will that wants what's best for others, and for our words, our celebration, our recognition, and even our habits that we're going to talk about here in just a bit, to flow out of that place. And then authentic, we kind of hit on this already, but we're not talking about flattery here. We're not talking about just niceties to be nice, right? What we're talking about is telling the truth as you see it. And another thing with that too, that I constantly have to monitor myself on, and I think there's personality types that are like mine that have to monitor themselves on, is like, you actually decrease the power of genuine recognition whenever you exaggerate. Whenever you say, you are just the best speaker that I've ever met ever, right? Is like, in some ways we can look at that and say that's a really good compliment. And if it's true, then maybe you should say that. You probably should say that, right? But if it's not true and you're just saying you're a really exceptional speaker, I would rather you say you are such an exceptional speaker and here's three reasons why, than using some broad brush exaggerative statement that people are actually going to discount because they're just saying stuff at this point.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it takes in many ways, like in the same way that often it takes trust and within the confines of a relationship to receive criticism. like you should probably, as an individual in general, hold compliments in the same way. It's like, does this person know me at a level that they're actually able to inform, and that's not to say to completely discount anything anyone ever says to you, but understanding that like trust is built through relationship, and with relationship comes the impact of your words. And so you don't need to be speaking with like these overwhelmingly flattering, like over the top words to be acknowledging and celebrating people.
That's right. And to that point, like when you say something, make sure you mean it. Do not say things you don't mean. It was so interesting to me. I was talking to Michelle after our experience. Michelle was largely the logistical mastermind behind the experience that we just did in Austin. And it was if she was the mastermind, then it was a logistical masterpiece. It was pretty remarkable, the number of details that she was able to attend to and execute with excellence. And she made a point of telling me, which the fact that she made a point of telling me this is noteworthy. She shared with me that Brian Miles, who's mentor and friend of mine, he and his wife, Shannon, brilliant entrepreneurs that spoke at this experience. He had come up to her on the final day of the experience, and he just paused her for a second, which we're going to talk about here in just a bit in the actions. He paused her. He said, "Hey, just look at me real quick." And then he said, "You murdered this," which that is actually very authentic to the language Brian uses. So, but, and then what she said though, in recanting this story to me, is she said, "And I just get the feeling that Brian doesn't just say stuff like that." What she's saying there is, I actually think that compliment like was authentic, and he said it because he meant it. And because of that, it carried a ton of weight for her. And so what we're not going to say is don't say things that you mean because you want to be able to, keep them reserved and keep people hungry. Right. What we do want to say is say things that you really, really, really mean, and make sure you mean them whenever you say them.
So we have 5 leadership principles. Let's just jump into the first one. What is it?
Yeah. So these kind of inform why it's helpful to think about the topic of celebration and recognition. We'll run through these principles somewhat rapid fire. Number 1 is the things that get rewarded get repeated. And so number 1, it shows why we should be engaging in recognition. But then number 2, be wise about what you recognize, because the thing that when you recognize something, especially publicly in your organization, it's literally you waving a flag saying, "Everyone pay attention. I want all of us to do more of this." And if you're not careful with that, you will reward and recognize things that you don't actually want to occur in an organization. And so if someone, say you have a salesperson that just is getting insane results and you celebrate them without simultaneously paying attention to the fact that they were probably exercising some toxic competitiveness, the way that they got those sales are not exactly aligned with the organization's values, and they basically said the ends justify the means, so I'm going to do whatever it takes. You are waving a flag telling people, do stuff like that. And they will, is what's crazy, is people are so driven by recognition and affirmation within a culture that people will repeat what you reward. So be very diligent and deliberate about what you reward and what you recognize.
I guess that's a really good example of when, if you're, depending on which chair you're sitting in and how much insight you have, like, could be, it seems like, oh, we're rewarding this really good thing because they're performing well. And then when you actually look under the hood, the means at which they accomplish that thing, coming into question. Yeah. Do you have any other examples of what that could look like? Like rewarding something that maybe from the outside perspective is like, oh, well, of course we would reward performance. But it was misaligned with the intention.
I mean, a very practical example that's somewhat related is compensation, right? When you are designing compensation plans, compensation is recognition, right? It's I see what you're doing and this is what I value it as. Well, I've seen organizations so often say, man, this person is crushing acquisition, but the minute they acquire the customer, the back end service after we acquire the customer sucks, and they don't care at all about the handoff. Like, they don't pay attention to the transition, and they're not following up at all to make sure the customer gets served. And it's like, okay, well, what's their compensation? It's like, well, we're paying them we're paying them commission on acquisition strictly. And well, there you go, right? And you could be the loudest leader in the world. And I can say this because I might give you a run for your money, right? I'm a pretty loud leader. You could be the loudest leader in the world, and your words will not speak as loudly as the paycheck that they get twice a month. I guarantee that. And so you are telling them what you value based on what you pay them for. And so it's really helpful to constantly and consistently make sure that your comp plans align with what you actually want to be reproduced in your organization. And don't tell people, hey, I'm going to pay you for this because this is what's actually valuable. But then tell them, hey, but really I value these things over here. If you value these things over here, find a way to compensate for those things as well. So it's not you talking against the comp plan that you've already established.
Yeah. So we've identified what maybe you don't want to explicitly or only reward. What does rewarding the right things look like?
Yeah, I love to shout out and recognize hidden work, right? I love to, as a leader, and you can see this in compensation packages, but we already talked some about that. But it's like, I often want to recognize, here's an example, like Bert or Michelle on our team for the things that they do that most people would call boring. Right. And like when you call attention, you say, man, you do boring things so well that no one even knows they're going on. And that's the measure of success is we never even realize that this process is being executed just because it happens like clockwork. It's almost like a machine does it. And it's because, man, you're so consistent. You're so diligent. You're so repetitive. So, I personally want for myself, but also for our whole team to be consistent, diligent, steadfast, not just extravagant, big, creative, bold. And so I'm going to recognize those things that are often going to be overlooked because that's something that I want to see reproduced in our organization. I also want to call attention not just to people's performance, I want to call attention to their character because I want to constantly remind our people every time you as a leader publicly affirm someone, you're making a culture bid. You're saying this is something that I'm hoping all of you pay attention to because this is something that I as a leader value. And people might not use that language, but they pay attention to it. And so, you're basically saying pay attention to this, value this because I value this. And we want to value people's character, not just their performance. So I often will use the phrase, what you did was good, but the way you did it was what really stood out to me. Because that's basically me giving a talk to our team at that point on the way we do what we do means everything. Critically important.
Yeah. Was there anything else you wanted to say on that before we move on?
No, I don't think so. Let's go on to number 2. So number 2 is directly related. It's culture is what you create. And or what you tolerate. And so what we're talking about here is like, what do you want more of? Well, start by just celebrating, recognizing, and being thankful for that. But then also, what do you want less of? Make sure you're not tolerating that. That's less in the realm of celebration and recognition. But also make sure that you're not creating a culture that celebrates and recognizes things that you don't actually want in your organization, because that can be really toxic too.
What do you mean by that?
Let's use what can be a little bit of a sensitive example. So we live in a time and we are a company that really values healthy growth, right? And we also believe in freedom and responsibility. You can over-index on those things, and suddenly we're slapping healthy growth as the bumper sticker to excuse mediocrity. And we're saying, oh man, you're doing such a good job of taking off at 2 p.m. and you're doing such a good job of being with your family over the weekend. Meanwhile, your work isn't good, right? And like you're not giving your best. You're not being wholehearted in what you do. But if we are celebrating or if we are endorsing mediocrity, that's not helpful. We're essentially tolerating. We're saying that, well, you should, take time off and lower your standards in pursuit of that because that's healthy growth. No, we need to have a proper conception as a team of what healthy growth actually is and what freedom and responsibility actually is. It's another thing that I have honestly told our team before, and I have to remind myself of is freedom and responsibility is one of our core values, right? Which means that, we experience uncommon freedom when we take uncommon responsibility. If we're not careful, we can make that principle overly simplistic and say freedom equals vacation, responsibility equals work. And it's like, no, that's not the value, right? The value is, man, when I do good work and I take responsibility for my work, I experience it as freedom, right? And certainly part of that is I get to go on vacation and things like that. That's great, right? But it's more than just, man, when I do good work, then my payment for that is I get to go on vacation. No, it's, man, when I actually take full responsibility of that which has been given to me to influence, steward, and be responsible for, then the thing that I experience in all of that is freedom. And that's what we really want people to have an experience. And so what we don't want to do is anytime someone goes on vacation and they're off their phone the whole time is to say, man, that is exactly what we're talking about when we say freedom and responsibility. That is one manifestation of freedom and responsibility. And especially if they did a really good job documenting what needed to be done and delegating what needed to be done. Awesome. But we need to make sure that we're not creating a culture that just says, vacation is the value, because that's not the value. If it was, we would just say vacation is one of our core values.
Yeah. So you have both create and tolerate, right?
Yeah.
How does intentionality speak into those two things? Yeah,
well, a lot, right? We often tolerate things that we subconsciously inherited. Right. And we just say, oh, well, that's just the way that it's always been. And so that's the way that it's going to be. Or we never took time to ask the question, is this best? Is this best for our people? Is this best for our customers? It's just something that we tolerated. The minute we say, we're going to take an active role in creating the culture that we actually want, well, you're getting on offense at that point. You're shifting your leadership weight and your influence from your heels to your toes. And so to answer your question, you're operating with intent at that moment. And so what we're really talking about here is, what is the culture, what is the culture that we want to be a part of? And how do we go about making that happen more and more? And I'm just submitting that recognition and affirmation are a huge part of that.
Mm-hmm. Let's move on to the third one, which is in vulnerability, leaders go first. Can you share a little bit about why you put that on there?
For me, one of my love languages is words of affirmation, giving and receiving, right? I thrive on that. That is not everyone's personality style, is what I know to be true. And for a lot of people, words of affirmation feels very vulnerable because, we teach something called the 6 stages of relationship, and good affirmation and recognition bridges the gap from what I think about you to what I feel about you. And the minute you go to what I feel about you, like it can be really, really tough for people. And I was just having a conversation with someone the other day. They were at our experience. We always close our experience with affirmations. It's such a powerful time. And literally within 72 hours of being together, the room is in tears. It's unbelievable. It's really, really powerful. And I think necessary for leaders. That's why we do it every single time. But someone was telling me, they were like, I had something that I was just on the edge of my seat wanting to say, but I couldn't bring myself to say it. I couldn't bring myself to stand up and say it. And certainly in a room full of 60 people where all eyes are on you, that can be really intimidating and really hard. But what I often see is that even if it's not 60 people, even if it's one person, there can be a lot of resistance that we face to sharing people what we think with people, what we think about them, and telling people what we feel about them. It feels vulnerable. And what I know to be true is a lot of times leaders need to be the last person to speak, right? In times where it's like ideation or talking about what the business is going to do moving forward, or planning or things like that, sharing of opinions. A lot of times in those scenarios, it's really helpful for a leader to be last to speak because they want everyone's thoughts and opinions to get out. In situations that are vulnerable, the leader actually needs to go first, right? In situations where you are asking people to give something of themselves, whether it's shout outs or affirmations or telling people how they, express gratitude for the year or something like that, people are going to sit back until they see someone be the living example of what they want to be or what they aspire to be. And so a lot of times you have to give some of yourself first. You have to be vulnerable first. And it feels vulnerable. It feels exposed because you're like, we might do this affirmations exercise and I might speak and I might give my whole self to this room. And then after that, it might be crickets. And that is scary and intimidating. It's a good thing you're not doing it for you, though, right? If you are doing it for you, then you're not going to do it, right? If you're doing it because it's the right thing to do and you're doing it for other people, then that will give you the courage to stand up and exercise that vulnerability.
I mean, I guess you've alluded to it already, talking about showing people how you, or telling people how you feel about them, right? There's a layer of vulnerability there. Can you maybe dive into why does recognition and affirmation feel so vulnerable, both for the person giving and sometimes even the person receiving it?
I would be interested to know your thoughts on this because like I said, this is there are other love languages that don't come as naturally to me. This is the one that I love this, right? I literally love this. And it's one of my favorite things to do. So in some ways, I would be theorizing. But I guess anytime you ask someone to really tell you about how they feel about you, it's like, I mean, right, we all know this, right? The first time I ever told Aspen I love you, the first thing that's coming to my mind is like, what is she going to say back right now, right? And I experienced a lot of resistance with, man, like, when am I going to do this? And do I want to do this? Because what is she going to say back? And eventually, so that's an area where I struggled with it, right? Eventually, it got to the point where I was like, I don't care what she says back. It's not about what she says back to me about me, because this is really how I feel about her. And if I can do it in that arena, I can do it in other arenas pretty easily. It's like, I'm going to give myself, and at risk of being rejected, at risk that you might not receive it, at risk that you might not say nice things back. And that's okay. Because in some ways, what we're talking about here is this is a gift, right? I am blessing you with this, and you could, what I find is people rarely, if ever, reject your affirmation, but especially if it's wholeheartedly given in abundance with authenticity. But ultimately, the result doesn't really matter if it's the right thing to do.
Yeah.
Is there anything you would add to that?
As far as why
people
so
experience
vulnerable?
Resistance? Like, why do people not do this?
I mean, I think you already spoke to it like that. Yeah, what if it's not received well? What if they don't? What if it's not received well? What if they don't care? What if it's weird? What if it's uncomfortable? What if it's awkward? What if what I say is like doesn't resonate? Like, I think there's a lot of like I me in those questions,
yeah.
right? And then it's just a matter of, if you're framing it in a way of like, oh no, the intention of this is to serve them, that would probably solve like most of the anxiety around something like that. So,
and it's hard to give what you haven't received.
Yeah.
So, that's what I think. It's one of the reasons why we do affirmations at the end of our experiences, is because a lot of times people, grew up in homes or are now playing the leadership role where no one's asking, how can I encourage this person? But everyone's looking to this person for encouragement.
Yeah.
And it's really, you can't give what you haven't received. But it is like a muscle in that way. Right. I just get this feeling, and it's one of the visions that motivates our experiences. Like, we've got 60 leaders that were in that room that are going to be like the world's most encouraging leaders this week, because they just like their cup is overflowing. And now they're just looking for opportunities to encourage and affirm the way that they were encouraged and affirmed. And Christmas is such a wonderful time to do that, right? That's when this episode is airing, is right in between that critical juncture between Thanksgiving and Christmas. It doesn't have to be a Christmas, but this is a good time to get started. And what's cool about that is, I always think about it. It's like when you move into a new house, you've got like that 3-week juncture where if you see your neighbor, you should ask what their name is. Because if we get 6 months down the road and you're now asking what their name is, you're like, oh, dadgummit, it's too late, right? And so that 3-week juncture is a critical time to bake the cookies, ask what their name is, meet people, all of that. Take advantage of that time. Christmas kind of provides that for our team. Is it's like you've got this like unique window where it's not going to totally blindside people if you suddenly get really warm and affirmative and like positive. And it's like, so if you need that to be like, I'm going to exercise a little bit of vulnerability, blame it on Christmas, right? And just say like, 'tis the season. I guess I caught the bug and I don't want to be Scrooge. I just want to say how I feel about y'all real quick.
Yeah. I think I stole this from you. But I mean, recently,
so it might not be very good.
But I mean, recently in the last, actually, no, this goes directly back to Path for Growth. July, we had our team experience and we did, it was my first experience of affirmations and affirmation station and that whole thing. And I left that thinking, and I think you had said it at some point, either there or before, of like not leaving things left unsaid. And that specifically resonated with me. And it's so simple and easy to remember just like not leaving things left unsaid. And so I guess over the last few months, as people come to mind, that like kind of echoes in my brain, and I've been a lot more forward with like expressing gratitude for people and taking the time to send that text or that voice memo or whatever. And it is vulnerable. It is sometimes it's unexpected. I mean, sometimes I'm like, 8 a.m. on a Monday, here you go, dude, like long text, scripture, like all this stuff. But I'm just like, man, I'm just grateful for you. And like, this is the time that I just felt that. And like, I'm going to do this. And in many ways, like the intention is to build others up. But in the practice of that has been so good and edifying for me, because I just like feel, when I think about the people in my life and I think about the ways that the Lord is using them and like their character and how God has designed them for specific passions and gifts and the way that they're using them, like I leave those moments feeling so inspired, like, I mean, just overflowing with inspiration for my own life and the lives around me. And that starts with vulnerability, right? Leading with vulnerability. And sometimes those messages are met with like a reciprocation, which is awesome, but it's not an expectation. But like in many ways, not from the spirit of self-service, but it's like gratitude begets gratitude. Like that vulnerability is a reflection of, or it gives other people a reflection of like what could be, and hopefully inspires them to continue that pattern forward.
Yeah.
So.
And, don't even think about it just in the context of your company, right? It's like, it's good for everyone if the good things that you see in the world get repeated. And so like, wouldn't it be a shame if you saw good things going on and you didn't say anything about it? Because that's going to decrease the chance that person has the motivation and energy to repeat those things. It's like, it does not cost you anything to look at the cashier at the grocery store and say, man, the whole time I've been checking out through this line, you've been smiling. And like, that's just awesome. 5 seconds, right? Yeah. And I mean, can change so much. And so just putting on our recognition, like sunglasses in some ways, and saying like, I'm going to see and say stuff everywhere that I go is a really good standard to hold.
Let's move on to number 4. Recognition is like perfume. Explain.
I heard someone say this on Carey Nieuwhof's leadership podcast. It's actually a pastor of one of the fastest growing churches in the country right now, and it's here in Phoenix. It's CCV, Christ Church of the Valley. Pastor that church. I think his name is Ashley. Which I was like, his name is Ashley. That's kind of cool. I'm down. I haven't met Ashley, but Ashley, you're here in the Valley. We'd love to have you on the podcast. So he said, recognition is like perfume. He said, it's nice to be around and it's good to smell, but if you drink it, it's poison. And it's pretty good, right? It's like, oh, I like the smell of that. Some of us drink recognition, and that is poisonous to our soul. And not only do we do that, we teach our team to drink recognition. We make their end all be all of value and worth, and we reinforce their belief that their value and worth comes from the things that they do. And you're teaching them to drink perfume at that point. You're teaching them to drink poison. And what's really tough about that is if people get obsessed with the headlines of the best things that they've done, then the critics are going to crush them. right? What we really want to be is people that aren't really moved all that much one way or the other by headlines or by critique, but rather we're steady, and these recognitions are nice encouragements for moving forward, but they are not at all statements about our identity.
Yeah.
And so I just felt like that was worth highlighting here. And before we get into the practical side of this episode, is we always need to properly contextualize the way that we receive recognition and the way we extend it.
How do you fight against or solve for that?
I mean, have your identity rooted in something that's immovable, I think is the biggest thing that I would say. And then I think this is where it's crucial too. Like we say, oh, hey, what you did is not who you are. A lot of times when people do things that are wrong, like you made mistakes, things like that, we also need to remind people that when they do good things and all of that, that's not who they are either, right? And so we just need to remind people like, hey, you're not perfect, and this won't happen every time, but it did happen this time. And I do want to call attention to how you did such a good job of this, right? You know, a good example of this is, I already alluded to it, Michelle worked so hard on this past experience, and she had some late nights last week, right?
Yeah.
And so like, me just being quite frankly hopefully a strong leader but also a good friend to her is saying like, hey, you're now on this like high, which is awesome, and it would be really easy for you just to keep that going and just like basically run on adrenaline in the next week. I just said like, I think it would be good for you to take a breather and take a rest and just recognize like you just did all these awesome things and they were awesome, but that's not who you are. And that like, you don't have to be working late nights every night for you to be a valued contributing member of this team. And so let's just hit the reset button now and get back onto some normal rhythms. I think we've got to make sure that we treat people as though their work is not who they are. Their work is where they serve, and that they're serving from a good place.
Yeah. And when you're running a team full of threes on the Enneagram, that's extra important.
Dude, yeah. And when you are a 3 on the Enneagram, yeah, we got a lot of achievers in our business.
I was like, there's 2 sitting across the table from each other right now. And
that's a
we
great
got some
point.
more on
Olivia,
the team,
Michelle, yeah, exactly. And
yeah.
So yeah, encouraging. You know, it goes to, we bit off some pretty intense strategic priorities for Q4 here. Like between myself, you, Olivia, and Michelle, we've got a lot of work that we want to accomplish above and ahead of where we currently are. And thankfully, you know, when we did our strategic priority meeting, we were all extremely like energized by it, game on for it. We all knew it was a lot of work, but we were game on for it. And I felt like the message that I was supposed to send and share with our team on the back end of defining those strategic priorities was not this like, hey, let's give it everything we absolutely have and sell ourselves out for these priorities, and we're going to cross this finish line Q4, right? I actually felt like that is in each of these individuals. They got that message, right? They've got the pep rally. They've got the pep talk. They each have proven that they're holding an extremely high standard with getting work across the finish line. And so I was like, that's not what I think my role to say is here. My role is to say, hey, remember, Thanksgiving's coming up. Christmas is coming up. This is a really critical time for our experience. Like, we are not going to miss out on being present with the things that matter most to get these things across the finish line. And do not allow the fact that you have to finish your strategic priorities keep you from celebrating the incarnation of Jesus Christ, which is crazy that we need to say that, but we need to say that. And we're very capable of not. And so also just kind of, you know, recognizing like, that goes into what you reward will get repeated. If we reward a sellout mentality to achieve the goal, then we will get more of that. And it will probably reduce tenure on our team because people will burn out and burn up, right? But I guess the final caveat I would give to that is it takes leadership wisdom to know, do these people need a push and a motivational talk, or do they need an encouragement word of grace? And knowing which one to offer at the right time, I think is really, really, it's something that I wouldn't have even known to do 5 years ago that I know a little bit more about now.
And I guess in the spirit of recognition, I think you did it really well.
Good. Well, we'll see.
No, I mean, I know for me personally, it was a good like speed bump to just be like, oh yeah, like we are like we are going into this holiday season, and I know me personally, like I have things going on during this holiday season that are going to pull me out of town and be busy. And like, I want to be present with those people that I'm going to be with. And it was a good heart check of like, oh yeah, like this, and the new year is just around the corner. And yes, we can achieve this, but like, at what cost?
Yeah.
Right.
And it's not to say that we're not trying to achieve it. We're actively, but what I kind of saw in that is I was like, I think me saying this actually might be more inspirational to working hard in the times we need to work hard.
Yeah.
Which is, you wouldn't necessarily think that. And it requires a little bit more trust and faith to say that. But it's why this is a critical recognition principle that I don't think we expected to get into is if you're going to recognize well, you need to understand what your people are motivated by.
Yeah.
And that, like, what is driving and motivating them is critical, because you could be recognizing with things that they don't actually care about that much. And meanwhile, there's all this opportunity to recognize, incentivize with things they actually do care about. You're just unaware. So really understanding what motivates people is really helpful.
Let's move on to the last one before we dive into the practical real quick.
These final two are kind of like warnings in some ways.
Yes. Yeah, I would agree. So the last one is there's a difference between generosity and recognition. Yeah, I mean, even I actually have questions that, what is the difference between generosity and recognition?
I actually have questions. Yeah. Generosity is giving without expectation of anything in return. And it's not contingent upon anything either, right? Generosity is selflessly giving of yourself or your resources to other people. So when I give a Christmas bonus to a member of our team and say, hey, I just wanted to give you this $1,000 check because it's Christmas and I just appreciate who you are and I just wanted to be generous. What I'm not saying there is, man, you crushed your Q4 goal and I just wanted to say Merry Christmas. Those are two very different messages. And we probably don't have the time. And honestly, like this is probably something I'm still working through on my own. Recognition often comes to a degree with an expectation. It comes with an expectation of like, you did something and as a result, I want to say thank you for that. I want to make sure I'm recognizing that effort. But then also you recognize with the expectation of a return of things being repeated. Generosity, a lot of times things get repeated, but you're kind of just putting up your hands and being like, this is a generosity play, right? And I just want to give because I feel compelled to give. And understanding the difference between the two is really, really critical. We had a member of the Path for Growth community recently that his company paid for the funeral expenses of a family's daughter that passed away, I believe, at age 13. Yeah. Tragic situation. So sad. Was that recognition or generosity? No one is asking, how did this team member perform?
Yeah.
And allowing that to influence, should we do this? No. What they said is, this is the right thing to do. We feel God is calling us to do this. And so we are going to do this. And that is divorced from any red, yellow, green. And I think why that's so important is because it helps preserve the beauty of true, genuine generosity, and it doesn't distort it into something that's manipulation. And so distinguishing between the two of like, if you're going to recognize for effort taken and accomplishments achieved, do that. And I think that that's really good. And then I think there's also spaces to be generous. Just recognize that those are two different things.
Yeah.
And I would say maybe you can recognize generously.
Yes. Yeah. I do like the distinguishment though, because it also creates separating that language and creating language around it creates intentionality. So it's like, a leader can step back and go, yeah, where are the areas that I'm making room and margin for me to just be generous? And then also where are the areas where I am being intentional about recognizing the people that I'm leading in a way that's recognizable and effective and regular. And so I feel like most of my questions with that specifically are more in the practical realm. So let's just dive into you said you have 7 practices
Yeah. And I think these are really simple. Like, I think it's very practical. And so hopefully we're bought into the reality and power of celebration and recognition. Now we're just saying, how do we do these things? And I honestly think my goal would be choose one of these that you want to do. Some of them are leadership things. Some of them are more personal, individual things. Choose one and do that between now and the end of the year. And maybe consider creating a habit or rhythm of doing it regularly.
Mm-hmm. What's the first one?
Yeah, it's creating space and framework for peer-to-peer shout-outs. So this can happen two ways. It can be maybe it's a Slack channel that you have or whatever platform you use for what would it be? Async communication, right? Where people, can post in their shout-outs, right? And, create that space. But then also what I would say is the best teams that I know I've been a part of, we do this on our team. We work with many companies that do this. In their like team communication meetings. So they've got the full team there, or they've got their department leads there, or things like that. They just create space. Maybe it's 15 minutes for like, what shout outs do people have? Mm-hmm. One of the best examples I've seen of this is with a team of about 30, I believe it's about 35 people now that we work with in Austin, Texas, Five Stone Tax. And JP is the owner of Five Stone Tax, and they do a team meeting. I believe it's once a month. And in that team meeting, they just open it up for shout outs. And what's so cool is they've created the culture where people are like showing up to that meeting ready with things to say. And I mean, people are clapping, people are laughing, and people leave that meeting smiling. Right. And so in some ways, one of the ways we teach accountability is the team holds the team accountable, not the leader. It's not the leader that holds the team accountable. It's the team holds the team accountable. The same is true with the recognition. The leader does not recognize the team. The team recognizes the team. So creating the environment where people can do that across the organizations, and where it's like, hey, this is now when we do that. All you're doing is providing the speed bump so that people take time to say, what was good and right and true that happened that I saw recently, and how do I make sure someone hears about that?
Mm. The second one is write handwritten notes, and I actually experienced this from you pretty recently, and it's one of my personal favorites. But
well, good to know.
Shed some light in on that.
Yeah, well, I've got a lot of people that I could speak to, kind of being inspirations in this regard, but probably the one that stands out as the most ruthlessly consistent is Tracy Panase. Tracy is one of our one-on-one coaching clients. She, that woman, you do not see that woman in person without receiving a gift and a handwritten note. But here's what's also cool is I know this because I get to coach Tracy. She, her high return habit is, so she runs a franchise organization. They have, I think, 153 franchisees right now, all across the country. And her high return habit is every day she writes a handwritten note of encouragement to a franchisee.
Love that.
Unbelievable.
And that takes some intentional time to do.
That takes some intentional
especially
time.
Running a business, like love it.
Dude, and she's a machine, right? But then she's not a machine because it's like you get it and you're like, she actually noticed, like her heart is in this. So I just admire Tracy so much in that regard. And so, when you think about a handwritten note, what is the power of it? Well, the power of it is it's so rare nowadays. The second thing is it's like this mini moment, like, what do people get in the mail now? Ads and bills, right? Like that's what people get in the mail, right? And so if you get a handwritten note in the mail, you're like, before you even open it, you're feeling good. And then you see whose name is on it and you're like, man, this is awesome. And then number 3, it's something that you can keep with you, which is really, really critically important. So shout out to Tracy. She does such a wonderful job of that. And her actions, I know, inspire other people to do the same.
Yeah. This is less leadership based, but more just on the I think the power of like handwritten letters and notes. When I was in boot camp, my parents sent a letter every single day, and we didn't even get mail every single day. And so I was getting on the days we did get mail, I was getting like multiple letters from them, and like realized like, oh wow, my dad literally bought. Sometimes it was like a Hallmark letter that was funny or whatever, but like took the time every single day while I was in boot camp for 8 weeks to like write a letter, put a stamp on it, put it in the mail, and was like thinking of me. And so that was awesome. And I kept many of them. But in that same thought, like a group of friends that I lived with in Tucson, some of my closest friends, collectively wrote a bunch of letters and stuck it in one envelope and sent it to me as just like encouragement while I was there. And yeah, like kept them, like still have them. They're in a box. I like every time I move or like am cleaning things out, I come across them and I sit down and I lose about like an hour of productivity because I'm just like reading through them and just remembering, and like it's so anyway. It's an incredible tool to use.
It's something that we do before our in-person experiences, and we've done it since year one, is we write everyone that's attending a handwritten letter, and our team does that. And that was much easier whenever we had 13 people showing up to our experience. Now we have 60 people showing up to our experience. And it's like, we still do it. And why do we still do it? Well, there's many reasons, but one of the reasons is like, we are requesting of people to give themselves at this experience. Like, we are asking of them to pour themselves into it. So like we already said, we should probably go first. And so like, we're going to invest a little bit of our time, energy personally into them before they even have the opportunity to invest into this experience. And yeah, so powerful, like so powerful. Do not forget the value of just handwriting a note.
Yeah, it's good. Number 3.
Yeah. The final thing I would say on number 2 too is like, we're talked about it with your team a lot, but like, I dare you, leave a handwritten note for your spouse, like in the next week. Good things seem to happen when you do that. Just saying. Okay, let's go to number 3. So make proactive phone calls. So there's a story behind this one. And I think I've shared on the podcast before. Olivia on our team, one of the things that I realized is like, man, I can't even remember how I realized this, but I realized if I'm not careful, we have a remote team. And the only time Olivia, who's our coaching manager, sees my name pop up on her phone spontaneously. We have our regular one-on-one meetings, but what I was thinking about is like, when she sees my name pop up on her phone spontaneously, it's one of 2 things. One is I have a request to make of her. Number 2 is I have feedback to give her. And I was like, man, that's like not a great way to experience my name popping up on your phone. And I don't want to repeat that necessarily. And so I just made the decision, like, I'm going to start rewriting that narrative a little bit, and had remembered that she did a talk, not actually part of Path for Growth. She just facilitated a panel at a Women in Business Summit at our church. And I just made the point of watching that recording. And then I just gave her a spontaneous phone call. And I said, like, Olivia, well, she answered the phone and she's like, hey, Alex. And I was like, she's expecting feedback or a request. And then I just asked her, I said, Olivia, I've got a 2-minute version or a 30-minute version. Which one do you want? And she said, well, I was just about to sit the boys down for lunch and I need to make sure that like they're set and good to go. So can we do the 2-minute version now? And then if we need to, we can schedule a 30-minute one later. And I was like, yeah, that's totally fine. And I said, I won't keep you for too long. But I just watched your recording from the panel that you facilitated. And I've got a whole list of amazing things that you did. You were so humorous. You were so intentional. You worked with the room that was given to you. You made sure that people had the opportunity to hear their voice heard. You got really, really practical in the content with people. You did such a good job. And I just want to make sure you heard from me, like, I'm so grateful for your example. I'm so grateful for your leadership. And I'm really, really proud of the way that you led on that panel. And she like had tears in her eyes. She's like, maybe we can do the 30-minute version. Right? Like, why was it so impactful? Well, because I hadn't done it in quite a while, right? And it's so fun. It's so fun, especially if it's authentic, to just blindside people by looking for opportunities to just call and say, all I've got for you is a word of encouragement. So I would just take time to do that, and that can be for people on your team. That can be for people you lead with. That can be for people. Sometimes it's even harder to do with people that are family or close friends, because a lot of times I'm like, I need to have a reason to call, and that's not a reason. That can be a reason is what I need to remember.
Yeah, I love that story.
Yeah, I know I've told that story before.
Yeah, we're running out of time, so I think we need to get through the next 4 or so. But
okay.
Number 4 is share public affirmations, which we do. We just got done doing at our experience. I know we just talked about this, but yeah, share a little more on that.
Yeah, I think of affirmations being different than shout outs. And then shout outs are oftentimes, here's what you did. Affirmations is, hey, I want to call out and encourage something that you are. And so I really like to distinguish that, and creating space for you to share publicly. I think private affirmations are necessary and good, but I also think that there's a space for public affirmation. And this is one where really as a leader, like take the leap, go first, be willing to give a toast to someone or affirm someone or call out someone in your meeting and just say, I want to publicly affirm you for who you are. And here's the many ways that I've seen that play out. This is a uniquely powerful time to do that. And I just hope that leaders take advantage of that. And with that, I think it actually connects to number 5, which is to the degree that you can, don't just share those affirmations with the individual, share them with their spouses. You want to see grown men become smitten, like affirm them like in front of the woman that they love most, and like watch their woman like nod their head and like just adore that, right? It's so good. It's so cool because just think about the context, and this occurs both ways, right? Is the husband or wife goes to work and they work really hard and they care deeply. And then they come back and they tell stories, hopefully, and share small details about what their day looked like. But if they're not a boastful and braggadocious human being, they're not coming back and saying, let me tell you about all the amazing things that I did today. And so their spouse oftentimes doesn't get to see, number one, all the great things that they're doing, but they also don't get to see how appreciated they are. And so getting creative, whether it's during an affirmation at a Christmas dinner that their spouse is at, maybe it's writing a handwritten note to their spouse, which I've seen leaders do before, but it's making sure their spouse hears about all the great things that they're doing and the important person that they are for the organization is a powerful form of recognition.
That goes into the next one, which is to thank their spouse, right?
Yes, exactly. So the next one is like, we just talked about thanking them in front of their spouse or affirming them in front of their spouse. Sometimes you just need to shift your eyes entirely and say, like, I want to thank you. Because if I'm experiencing any excellence in this person, I know that it's certainly not because they have a negative home environment. It's not because they have a neutral home environment. It's because they have an excellent home environment. And you play a role in that. I have, this is what I want to tell the spouses on our team. I have never seen a person perform exceptionally well whose marriage was really, really tumultuous bad and they weren't feeling supported at home. And right now, our whole team is performing exceptionally well. So I could thank all of them, but I get to see them all the time. I want to spend this time to thank you. And a lot of times, spouses are the unseen heroes behind the great work that your people do. And one of those people is your spouse, right? And so everything that we just said, like publicly affirming your spouse in front of the people that you lead. At the experience that we just had, we were doing affirmations, right? I did a move that I don't know if I should have done or not, but I gave all 60 people, I said, this is Aspen's phone number. And I want you to know none of this would have occurred if it weren't for her love, care, and support. And we are getting better as a community because of her. And she wasn't able to be there that night because she was putting Lily to bed. And so I said, I would just appreciate it if you would affirm her, right? Get creative on this one to make sure the spouses feel how much you value who they are and what they do.
This last one, which is slow them down to receive it. I just thought of Brian stopping Michelle and look into my eyes, right? Like hear what I am saying. Can you share a little bit more on that before we close out?
Yeah, well, we know this because we feel it, right? It's hard. It's hard to give affirmation because it feels vulnerable. If it's wholehearted, right? You're giving a piece of your heart. It's also hard to receive affirmation, genuine affirmation, because it feels vulnerable. And so what do is we often deflect with self-deprecation. Well, I wasn't that good, or I'm not all that, right? Or we deflect to the team, which is a good leadership practice. Well, there are a lot of people that were really, really involved. Or, there's other strategies that we use to basically say that light is really bright and I don't want it on me. And I'm not even saying we shouldn't use those strategies, but as a leader, notice when people are using those strategies and have the guts to say, hey, I know that they're doing a great job. I know that you've got an amazing team, but this doesn't happen without your intentionality and without your effort. And then look them dead in the eye. And I just want you to know that I see you and you're working so hard, you're doing such a good job with such character and well done. It's doubling back, slowing them down to be able to receive. And what's crazy is I have seen this happen before. You say it to them the first time, they deflect. You slow them down, look them in the eyes, say it a second time, and they get tears in their eyes. And now you know they've received it. And so you're leading by setting the pace in these conversations. And so set the pace well, slow people down, and lead them in the receiving of affirmation in their heart, not just in their head.
Yeah. Was there anything you wanted to say before we close out?
Yeah, we already said, Christmas is this wonderful time where in some ways people are primed to be able to do this. And you also probably have team dinners or team meetings or team parties or stuff like that. That's a fun time to give gifts, and that's a fun time to eat good food and drink good wine and all of that. And I think you should do all of that. The leadership part of this season comes in what we're talking about here. And not just giving a check, not just giving a few pre-primed words to everyone, but giving individual recognition and affirmation to specific people. And I would just tell you, the leaders that really maximize this season in service for other people are going to go first in that. They're going to be vulnerable. They're going to give their whole heart to it, and people are going to benefit. And I believe in that, God is going to be glorified.
Thanks, Alex.
Thanks, Ben. Hey, y'all, thanks so much for watching. If you want more content like this, we've got some killer stuff planned. So make sure you rate, review, and subscribe. Let's go, let's go, let's go.